bam. So the record button on this episode is hit. But the work for Kyler and I, who are co-hosting the show, began well before that button was pressed. Now, I'm not talking about setting up cameras and lights. I'm talking about the planning of the show itself. And maybe, contrary to popular belief, this doesn't happen by accident. So why don't we pry open the curtains and show you the behind the scenes of how we plan this very show. One of the things that we do, and that I love to do, I don't like to script, I like to show and plan. So I'm gonna show you an example of what Mila Note looks like, okay? Mila Note here is a tool that we pay for. I honestly don't remember how much it costs, but it's a tool that we pay for that enables us to plan our entire show. So this is kind of a look and feel of a planning of the last episode that you would have seen on our show. Now, if you didn't see that, you should go to Spotify or YouTube or wherever it is and watch the show, watch that episode. But if you did, you would see that this is exactly what happened and exactly what went down in the planning of our show. So I'll cover the big lines and then I'll kind of dive into the different pieces. The first thing we do is we try and think about why and what is important about the show. Now, let me just zoom in here just a little bit, make sure you guys are seeing this all nice and clear. So what is the video about, right? We tend to kind of take different pieces from that. We like to have some of the key takeaways. We like to show maybe some graphics or other maybe content that I've created before in the past, as well as other channels or other YouTube videos that have very good tips and tricks that we might want to pull from, or that we might want to take some of the video tags from. Now, another thing that we plan on a regular basis is the title. We sometimes come up with 2 variations of that title, as well as some information about the thumbnails, because that's super impactful and important. Now, we always plan the hook, right? The hook is kind of the intro to the show before the intro. We obviously plan a little bit of the intro itself, which is kind of an animated piece. And then we tend to plan 3 core points. So I'm just going to zoom out just a little bit to show you what those points look like. Point number one is always a point about the show itself. So let me go back to this show. Our formula has 3 steps with extra potential segments, right? So the first segment of every show is always going to be what we call the why, which is creating context and really makes the viewer know why this topic is worth diving into. Why should I pay attention to the rest of this video? Why should I get into the nitty-gritty of what this episode is talking about, right? So that why segment is always kind of the top of our show. It's not the hook, it's not the intro, but it's the opening segment of our show. So segment 1, point number 1. Point number 2 is simple. It's always what we call the how-to, which really brings you behind the scenes on the techniques and thought process behind what we are creating and is the real meat and potatoes of the show itself. So while watching this very episode, you understood that we plan these segments, right? You see how we do it. We use Mila Note, we make little bullet points, we write some of the script elements of it, not necessarily writing every single thing that I'm gonna say, because nothing I'm saying right now is actually scripted. So segment number 2 is how-to, and that's the meat and potatoes of our show, because this is basically a how-to show. Not just how to use Cinemaker, not just how to make video content, but to do the entire production process from pre-production to the distribution. It's our goal to bring you on the journey of what it takes to make content online, to make and produce that content, but also to succeed and scale with that content and have that work for you, your brand, or the brands that you serve. Segment number 3 of the show is what we call variants or variations of our advice. For example, if I show you a how-to on how to connect cameras, right, using Cinemaker, I might want to show you what that would look like if you were using your phone, your iPhone, but I might also want to look what that might look like if I was showing you how to use a DSLR, right? So there's variations of how you may or may not want to produce your show or connect certain cameras or do whatever it is that you're looking to create. So the behind the scenes segment, which is kind of the, segment 2 of our show, should always be followed by what about the variations, and the variations in our case, in our show's case, are about how does this relate to you or the different use cases you as a viewer might have. Showing those variants creates a really powerful way of expressing what the show is like. Now, beyond that, we also love to bring in what we call potential segments. Now, potential segments here are super important because they enable us to bake in kind of elements into the show that communicate important messages about what our show might want to cover. So one potential segment that we have on a regular basis that we might incorporate on a regular basis would be Cinemaker Update. Now, why? Well, simple. Cinemaker helps and produces and sponsors this very show. It powers this entire show. It's called the Director Studio Show for a reason, but giving you updates about new features that Cinemaker has come up with is a phenomenal way of doing that. Like, in fact, our video editor changed. The way that the video editing process works in Cinemaker has now been updated and changed. So if you download the latest version of Cinemaker, you can go and check that out. Now, I'm not going to dive into that because we're not there yet in this show. We're on pre-production. Mark, stick to the script, right? Segment number 2, potential segment number 2 that we might bring in. I say potential again because we might not bring this in to every episode, would be what we call lightning round Q&A. Okay, so using Cinemaker, people write to Cinemaker all the time asking questions. Now, if we add a lightning round segment to our show, we are effectively creating answers to frequently asked questions in ideally 1 minute or less, sometimes a little bit more. So, that disqualifies us from putting this on shorts, but we're going to think about cropping the video, bringing it into kind of Reels, TikTok, shorts format, YouTube shorts format to answer people's questions quickly, but that are engaging. They're questions that people are searching for. Maybe they have high search traffic and they're creating it as a trailer to the bigger show. Another potential segment is a live Q&A. Right? Maybe we bring on certain guests, we bring on viewers of our show and actually have them ask a question, bring them into the show, and then go through a training or go through the FAQ with them, showing them how to solve their problems and something that might be a little bit more complex, maybe something that wouldn't fit that lightning round Q&A. And then the last segment would be a potential guest or expert, right? So Kyler's here with me. He's on camera 5 over here on the production computer. He is one of those experts, right? So Kyler, you would be the kind of person that we would bring on to ask a question. He's kind of a setter of the show. Not only is he producing the show, but he's kind of this co-host that helps bring up different points or ask different questions. This is how we plan the show, but beyond the planning of the show itself, we also kind of bring in, we might show and have visual B-roll ideas. So one of those B-rolls is going to be the screen share. Our ability to bring on me in this bottom right corner, but also the screen share that you're seeing right here, the behind the scenes of this Mila Note itself, right? Showing Mila Note and showing the process of how we do it. But we also like to think, and I'll kind of go into this board over here, right? I'll zoom in just a little bit. This is the last episode. This is how we thought about the clips that we actually created. So there was 2 clips, right? We had the X number of elements, so we ended up going with 5, right? So these elements were in this segment right over here, the brand guidelines, keeping it short, clear over clever, don't forget the audio, and memorable. We have the 5 elements that make a good show intro. And then we have the BTS of us actually recording the intro. Those are the 2, when I say clips, I mean YouTube videos that we created from the last episode. And then we also planned our short videos, our reels, our TikToks. So clip number 1, but shortened, right? So it's, when I say clip number 1, it's really those 5 steps that we talk about is a YouTube video, but why not also make it a reel? Because the people who see the YouTube video aren't necessarily the people watching on Instagram or TikTok. So why not take that and try and make it fast? The reel number 2 would be the actual show intro. So just like literally putting out our show intro and then, putting something at the end saying, hey, go watch the Director Studio Show. That's worth publishing on TikTok, on Instagram, and YouTube Shorts. And then I thought that it would be really cool to maybe make the parallel between Jim Cramer's Mad Money intro, which we talk about in that episode, why I think it's a good intro, why it's informative for a how-to show and all the different things. And we bring that piece in to this show and that becomes another short. So we're leaving notes. We're recording this so that future Kyler, I always reference future Kyler, would know and remember when he's in the editing room what that may or may not look like. Point here is before we hit record, most of these things are kind of worked out. The script or the notes and the segments are there in Milanote. The show flow from episode to episode is in sheets. And this entire thing doesn't happen by accident. We are using these different segments and kind of thinking about the different formats and the length of time that those formats, even the format physically, vertical, horizontal, square, things like that, how all of those things end up in the show, end up cropping in the show, and then end up informing you, the viewer, to come to the show, that the show is out, that it's available, that it's watchable. Anyway, that's how it's done. See you in the next episode.